3 days before the wedding, I received a text, no greeting, no explanation, just a single line. The guest list is finalized. Hope you understand. Love you. My heart paused, not because it was unexpected, but because it confirmed a fear I'd always carried quietly, that I was never truly part of them. Not when I held her hand through every breakup, not when I paid the deposit on her venue because her credit card was maxed out, not even now when she typed love you with the same fingers that crossed my name off her guest list. I didn't reply. I didn't beg. I didn't ask why. Instead, I packed my bag while they posted filtered photos under champagne. I landed in Barbados, barefoot in the sand, holding a cocktail I didn't have to share. Then the wedding videos started appearing on TikTok. The groom had disappeared, my sister was crying on stage, and the internet was eating it up. Everyone wanted my reaction, but here's the truth. They excluded me to keep things perfect. And somehow, without me, everything fell apart. My name is Sarah Bennett. I'm 32 years old, and I co-founded a media agency in Seattle that turned profitable last quarter. I'm engaged to Ethan Carter, who's the calm to my chaos. Until a week ago, I thought I was okay being the quiet, responsible one in a very loud family. I was halfway through packing when the message came in. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, and I barely looked at it at first, assuming it was a reminder from the airline or a work notification. Ethan and I were flying out the next morning, and I was finally letting myself feel excited after months of grinding through one exhausting contract after another. But then I saw the name, Chloe, my sister. I opened the message and read it without much thought. Hey, just a heads up, the guest list is finalized. We had to make some tough cuts. Hope you understand. Love you. At first I didn't react. My brain couldn't process it, like it was missing context or a second part was coming. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe she meant someone else. Or maybe my name was somehow overlooked in the final copy but would still be on the RSVP. I stared at the screen again. This time slower. Finalized. Tough cuts. Hope you understand. I wasn't just another guest. I wasn't a college roommate she hadn't spoken to in years, or a coworker she didn't want to offend. I was her sister, her only sister, and she cut me. I set my phone down and stood still for a moment, my hands still gripping the corner of the suitcase on the bed. The hum of the AC filled the silence. I could hear Ethan's faint voice from the living room, probably on a call. The Seattle skyline outside the window glowed with that soft, peachy dusk light that always made the city feel gentler than it really was. But inside me, something had shifted. I picked up my phone again and opened Instagram. Chloe had posted a photo to her story just an hour earlier. It was a whiteboard decorated in rose gold marker with pastel flowers doodled around the corners. Guest list finalized. So grateful for all of you who will be part of our day. Below it, a list of names. I zoomed in, scanning column after column. I knew most of them. Childhood friends, extended family, mutual acquaintances. Even her old sorority sisters, one of whom had once told Chloe I was too intense to be around. 152 names. Mine wasn't among them. A part of me wanted to laugh, just to keep from falling into that familiar hole of disbelief. I'd always known Chloe could be selfish, but this was new, this was surgical, quiet, calculated. I didn't even hesitate. I hit call. Mom answered on the second ring, her voice light and overly cheerful. Hey sweetheart, what's going on? I skipped the pleasantries. Chloe just sent me a message. She said the guest list is finalized, and I'm not on it. There was a pause, just a second, but it was enough. Oh honey, Mom sighed. Don't take it personally. You know how weddings are stressful, complicated. They had to make some hard choices. She used that tone again, the one that always made me feel like I was overreacting, like I was a problem to be managed. Mom, she invited over 150 people. She included Lauren Davis and her husband, who Chloe hasn't spoken to since college. I'm her sister. I helped her move across the country twice. I loaned her money. I sat on her bathroom floor with her during panic attacks. And now she can't even give me a seat in the back row. Sweetheart, don't do this. It's her day. You're making it about you. I almost dropped the phone. I'm making it about me. She's the one who made a decision. She's the one who sent a cold, robotic message instead of picking up the phone, and you're siding with her again. Sarah, you've always been the strong one. Chloe's under a lot of pressure, and I'm not. I ended the call before she could say anything else. I stood in the center of my bedroom, fists clenched, heart racing, but oddly calm. It wasn't the kind of rage that needed to be screamed into a pillow. It was something colder, sharper realization that had been waiting in the wings for years. I've been the glue in our family for a long time, the one who never made waves. The one who always flew home for Christmas even when my startup was collapsing. The one who kept quiet when mom forgot my birthday but flew to Chicago to throw Chloe a surprise spa weekend. I was always expected to understand, but no one ever made room for me to feel anything. Sarah. I looked up. Ethan was in the doorway, holding 2 mugs of tea. His expression shifted the moment he saw my face. What happened? I hesitated, then walked over to him and took one of the mugs. Chloe's wedding is next weekend. I just got uninvited. He blinked. What do you mean? Uninvited? She cut me from the guest list. Sent a text. 3 sentences. Mom told me not to make a big deal out of it. Ethan didn't speak right away. He set his mug down, walked over, and took mine from my hand, placing it on the dresser. Then he looked at me and said quietly, "Do you want to talk about it? Or do you want to leave it behind?" I felt something loosen in my chest. I want to leave it behind. Good. He pulled me into a hug, and in that moment, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I wasn't going to sit around Seattle next weekend, refreshing social media and pretending it didn't hurt. I wasn't going to make excuses for people who had stopped seeing me as family. Tomorrow, I'd be on a plane with the man I loved, heading to a place where no one would look at me like I was too much or not enough, and this time, I wouldn't leave any space for them to follow. The next morning, we were at the airport by 7. Ethan held my hand while we waited in the security line, his thumb tracing slow circles over my knuckles. I hadn't told anyone where we were going. No dramatic exit, no final words. I just turned off my phone, deleted the calendar reminder that said Chloe's wedding, and chose silence. It was a direct flight from Seattle to Bridgetown, Barbados, 5 hours and change. I stared out the window during takeoff, watching the city fall away beneath us. The buildings turning into matchsticks, the roads like veins disappearing under clouds. Ethan had packed a carry-on for me while I was in the shower that morning. He knew I didn't need to explain. He leaned over, brushed my hair behind my ear, and said, "Just you and me, okay?" I nodded. Halfway through the flight attendants brought around small glasses of pineapple juice and warm mixed nuts. Ethan flipped through a travel magazine, pointing out places we might explore: the fishing village of Oistins, the beaches on the west coast, a cliffside restaurant he'd read about in a blog. I smiled. I nodded, but inside, I was somewhere else entirely. My mind kept drifting to my 13th birthday, when Chloe broke the new tablet Mom got me. She cried, said it was an accident, and Mom gave her my cake because she looked so upset. To high school, when Chloe took my car without asking and totaled it. Dad blamed me for leaving the keys out. To college, when I got into UC San Diego and Chloe didn't. I chose not to go so I could stay closer, help the family. No one asked me to, but they didn't stop me either. Every time something happened, I was expected to be the older one, the responsible one, the calm one. I was trained to swallow things before they could make a sound. But not this time. This time, they weren't just asking me to understand, they were acting like I didn't even exist. We landed just after 2 in the afternoon. The moment I stepped off the plane, the humidity hit like a warm wave, sweet, salty, alive. The airport was small, almost sleepy, and the customs line moved quickly. Outside, a driver held a sign with our names. He greeted us with a broad smile and 2 cold bottles of water, ushering us into a sleek black SUV with tinted windows and leather seats that smelled like vanilla and citrus. The drive to St. James took under an hour. We passed colorful houses with shuttered windows, kids playing soccer on dusty lots, and flowering trees that dipped low over the road. The ocean appeared, disappeared, and then came back full force as we curved around a bluff. I rolled down the window. The wind tangled my hair, and I didn't care. The resort was something out of a daydream: an open-air lobby with palm trees growing through the floor, white stone archways, and the sound of water everywhere. Ethan checked us in while I wandered to the edge of the infinity pool. Beyond it, the sea stretched in every direction, light turquoise near the shore, dark sapphire farther out. Pelicans hovered above the waves, diving like arrows. Our suite was on the top floor, facing the beach, floor-to-ceiling windows, a private balcony with 2 lounge chairs, and a king-sized bed dressed in linen so soft it looked like it might float. There was a welcome basket with tropical fruit and a handwritten note. I didn't read it. I just opened the patio doors, stepped outside, and let the view swallow me. Later, we ordered room service, fresh snapper, grilled pineapple, and something called coconut bread that melted in my mouth. We ate on the balcony. Ethan raised his glass and said, "To doing nothing with intention." I clinked mine against his. That night, I slept with the curtains open. The sound of waves was steady, like a promise. I dreamt of nothing. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. I slipped out of bed, pulled on the hotel robe, and stepped outside. The sky was beginning to pink at the edges, and the world felt suspended. I brought my phone with me, though I didn't know why. Habit, maybe. I hadn't turned it on since the flight. I sat in the lounge chair and stared at the sea. Then, after a long moment, I powered on the screen. There were texts, dozens, missed calls, emails, all from my mother, a few from unknown numbers. One from Chloe. I didn't open any of them. I deleted every notification. Then I opened the camera, flipped it to front-facing, and took a photo, my legs stretched in front of me. The ocean in the distance, a mimosa on the table beside me. I opened Instagram, uploaded the photo, and typed, "Glad I wasn't invited." Turns out I had front row seats anyway. I hit post, then turned my phone back off. They had built a wedding without me. I was building peace without them. The scent of lime and seawater clung to the air. When I stepped into the open-air lobby, sunlight streamed through wooden slats above, casting slow-moving stripes across the tiled floor. A soft breeze carried the sounds of the ocean, rustling palm fronds that framed the space like stage curtains. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until the woman at the front desk smiled at me and offered a cold towel infused with cucumber and mint. "Welcome, Ms. Bennett. We're so glad you're here." She handed me a tall glass filled with what looked like orange juice but tasted like mango, lime, and something with a kick I couldn't place until later, Scotch bonnet. It hit me with warmth but didn't linger, just enough to wake up every sense in my body. Ethan leaned against the marble counter, glancing at me with that quiet, knowing grin. "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah, I think I am." Our suite wasn't ready yet, but instead of having us wait in the lobby, they walked us to a shaded cabana by the beach, offered more drinks, and told us someone would come find us when the room was available. Not once did anyone seem rushed or distracted. They made eye contact, they listened, they smiled like they meant it. I had never experienced that kind of attentiveness without having to earn it first. In my family, being noticed meant being useful. I was the fixer, the one who made reservations, paid deposits, edited resumes, wrote cover letters, sent flowers when Chloe forgot birthdays. Being visible had always come with a job. Here, being visible was enough. Ethan and I sat by the water, our feet buried in sand that was cool near the surface and warm underneath. A couple walked past us, holding hands, their flip-flops dangling from their fingers, laughing at something only they could hear. I let myself lean into Ethan's shoulder and closed my eyes. The sound of waves brushing the shore lured me into something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not happiness, not exactly. It was more like absence. The absence of pressure, of responsibility, of apology. Later that afternoon, we were escorted to our suite. The moment the door opened, I exhaled audibly. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the sea like a living painting. The room smelled like linen and jasmine. A fruit basket sat on the table with a handwritten card that read, "We're honored to have you with us." There were no conditions attached to that sentence, just welcome. I took a long shower, letting the hot water wash off the memory of that message from Chloe, of Mom's voice, of every time I had made myself smaller to keep the peace. That night, we dressed up just a little, nothing fancy. I wore a sundress I hadn't touched in months. Ethan had on a button-down I'd bought for him last Christmas. We sat at the restaurant overlooking the sea, sharing plates of grilled fish and coconut rice. Sipping on a cocktail the waiter called the Island Ember. He raised his glass. "Two-piece," he said. "To being allowed to exist," I added. After dinner, we walked the beach barefoot. The moon lit the water in silver streaks. I stopped and looked out at the horizon. Somewhere out there, Chloe was trying on her wedding dress for the final fitting. My name wasn't on her list, and for the first time, I didn't feel like that meant I had failed. The next morning, I woke up with sunlight spilling across the sheets. Ethan was already out on the balcony, reading. I wrapped myself in the hotel robe and joined him. He handed me a mug of coffee with a slice of lime on the saucer. "They do this thing here where they add a little citrus to the roast." He shrugged. "I don't hate it." We sat in quiet for a while. The ocean was calm, the sky cloudless, birds swooping low, dipping into the waves. I pulled out my phone and looked at the screen still off. I turned it on just long enough to open the camera. I took a photo of the table, my mimosa, Ethan's coffee, the sea beyond us, framed perfectly. I uploaded it to Instagram with a single caption, "Glad I wasn't invited." Turns out I had front row seats anyway. Within minutes, the likes started rolling in, a few comments from colleagues, a laughing emoji from a college friend. But I didn't linger. Ethan glanced over and raised an eyebrow. "That the infamous post?" I smirked. "Just a quiet truth." He sipped his coffee and looked out at the water. No need for a front row seat when the view is better from here. We spent the rest of the morning lounging by the pool. Staff brought around cold towels and sliced fruit on skewers. A man named Marco asked if we wanted to reserve a sunset catamaran for the next evening. Everything moved at a different rhythm here, slower, but not stagnant. It was like the island had decided time was optional. I lay back on my lounge chair and let the warmth soak into my skin. I could still feel the bruises my family had left, not literal, but the kind you carry in your chest, the kind that sting when you laugh too hard or when a song catches you off guard. But they were fading. And for once, I wasn't desperate for anyone to notice. After lunch, we wandered back to our cabana by the pool, the kind with curtains you could draw for privacy, and a ceiling fan that spun slowly overhead. The sun was high, the breeze just enough to keep the heat from feeling heavy. Ethan stretched out on the lounge chair with his phone, one arm draped across his forehead. I lay beside him, my eyes closed, the warmth of the afternoon wrapping around me like a soft blanket. I heard him laugh under his breath, just a little exhale through his nose. What? He didn't answer right away. I turned my head toward him, shielding my eyes from the sun. You have to see this, he said, holding out his phone. I leaned up on one elbow and took it from him. The screen was already paused on the first frame of a TikTok video. The caption reading, "When the bride loses it before the cake even shows up." I rolled my eyes. Is this another Bridezilla compilation? Just watch it, he said, already smirking. I hit play. The video was shaky, probably recorded by a guest's phone from the second or third row of an outdoor venue. A string quartet played faintly in the background. The aisle was decorated with blush and white flowers, and the bride stood alone at the altar. Her veil was lopsided, her shoulders tense. She turned suddenly toward someone off camera, shouting, "This isn't my fault. He's being ridiculous. Somebody talk to him." My stomach flipped. The camera panned slightly, catching a glimpse of a man in a tux storming away from the altar, flanked by two groomsmen trying and failing to stop him. Guests murmured, some standing, others awkwardly seated. The video ended with the bride putting both hands on her head and letting out a sound that wasn't quite a scream but close. I blinked. "Play it again," I said. Ethan took the phone and rewound it. This time, I paid closer attention to the details, the setting, the people, the bride's voice. The second time through, there was no denying it, it was Chloe. Her hair was pinned in the exact way she described in a group chat months ago. Her voice, strained as it was unmistakable. And that dress, I'd seen the photos of her trying it on. A line, satin, off-shoulder, with a subtle shimmer. It looked like it had cost more than my first car. I handed the phone back and stared at the pool water, the tiny ripples catching sunlight. "You okay?" Ethan's voice was soft, measured. I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I think I am." He didn't say anything else, just slipped the phone onto the side table and reached for my hand. There was a strange calm in my chest, like the quiet that comes after a thunderclap, not triumph, not satisfaction, just stillness. I wasn't sure what surprised me more, that she had a full public meltdown or that someone had caught it and uploaded it to the internet, no filter, no edits, just raw, chaotic footage. But the thing that struck me hardest was her voice, that tone, desperate, shrill, blaming everyone in sight. "This isn't my fault." It echoed in my head. How many times had I heard her say those exact words over the years? When she crashed Dad's car, when she failed a class, when she lost her job at that interior design firm, it was always someone else. Always a situation, never her. I sat up, letting the towel around my shoulders slip down. "Do you think she knows it's online?" Ethan shrugged. "If she doesn't now, she will soon." I reached for my phone, hesitating before turning it on again. A tiny part of me expected missed calls or texts, but the screen stayed quiet. No alerts, no red badges. Just the default lock screen and the Caribbean light flooding over my hands. I opened TikTok and typed in a few words. "Bride meltdown wedding." The search populated instantly. The video we'd just watched had already hit over 300,000 views. But there were others, now different angles, different guests. Some had captions like "runaway groom drama" or "she really said not her fault." One had a slow zoom on Chloe with the text overlay, "When your big day turns into everyone's tea." I didn't laugh. Instead, I felt something loosening inside me. Something I hadn't realized I was still carrying the weight of, always being the strong one, the silent one, the responsible one who stayed behind to sweep up the pieces. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even smug. It just felt like balance, like gravity had shifted half an inch in my favor. Ethan handed me his sunglasses. "Let's go down to the beach. Come on, the water's too pretty to waste." I nodded, slipping them on. We grabbed towels, flip-flops, and left our phones behind on purpose. As we walked down the steps toward the shoreline, my mind lingered on a thought I couldn't quite shake. Maybe the universe wasn't always fair, but sometimes, just sometimes, it was precise. The next morning, the sound of waves was replaced by the soft ping of notifications. I had turned my phone back on only to silence an alarm, but now it buzzed again with a different energy. Ethan walked out of the outdoor shower, towel wrapped around his waist, rubbing his hair dry. "You seeing this?" He tossed me his phone, and I caught it instinctively. The screen was already open to TikTok. The video was loading. Its title in bold white text over a still image of a woman in a mint green jumpsuit holding a curling iron like a microphone. Bridezilla of the year. I pressed play. Olivia Harper. I recognized her from one of Chloe's posta stylist. Big on social media. Too big, clearly, to care about discretion. In the video, Olivia sat in what looked like a storage room filled with racks of gowns and tools. Her makeup was flawless. She leaned into the camera and whispered, like she was telling the world a bedtime story. "So, I just styled a wedding where the groom walked out mid-reception. Not exaggerating," he said, and I quote, "I'd rather leave now than lie forever," then stormed out. But wait, it gets better. The video cut to shaky footage of Trevor, pushing through a crowd of guests, jaw tight, eyes stormy. Behind him, Chloe, in her gown, shouted his name, her voice cracking, mascara streaked down her cheeks. Then came Evelyn, Chloe's grandmother. Her voice rang louder than the string quartet had the day before. She stood in the middle of the reception, pointing a finger straight at Chloe. "This is what happens when you erase people who love you. You cut out your own blood for vanity." He left because he saw through it. "I warned you." Gasps from the crowd. Someone dropped a glass. The video ended with Olivia holding back a smirk. I set the phone down slowly. My pulse wasn't racing. There was no thrill, just awe. It kept going. Ethan opened another video. A guest had gone live on Instagram and was now reposting clips on TikTok. The camera caught my father, red-faced, arguing with his brother. "Tom, you think this is my fault? You funded it. You pushed for the fireworks and the choreographer and the stupid horses. You made this circus. Don't you dare." He stormed off. The camera turned to catch my mother sitting alone at a table, staring into the middle of nowhere, champagne untouched. Every clip, every angle, every whisper was surfacing. And for the first time in years, it had nothing to do with me. I didn't share a single one. But the views kept climbing. Ethan scrolled and handed me his phone again. "Look at the comments. They were brutal. Serves her right. Is it just me, or is the grandma the real MVP here? You know someone was forced out before this wedding even happened." I couldn't stop reading, not because I wanted revenge, but because for the first time, strangers saw what I'd lived through for decades. They didn't know my name, but they knew hers. And they weren't buying the fairy tale. One video caught my attention more than the others. It was short, only 20 seconds, but powerful. It showed Chloe sitting alone on the edge of the dance floor, barefoot, holding the hem of her dress in one hand and her phone in the other. She was scrolling, watching herself fall apart in real time. Someone behind the camera whispered, "She's seeing it now." Ethan leaned over, sipping coffee from a mug he brought up from the breakfast cart. "You okay?" "Better than I thought I'd be," I said. "It's like they're unraveling on their own." He nodded, pulling a second mug toward me. "You didn't lift a finger. You didn't need to." I smiled and took a sip. The coffee was strong and slightly bitter. It grounded me. "Sometimes karma just needs a stage and a Wi-Fi connection," I said. He chuckled. "I'm just impressed by the production value." There were videos from every table. Edits with music, even a slowed-down replay of Trevor walking out with dramatic violin over it. I didn't laugh. Not fully, but the edges of my mouth lifted. "So this is what justice looks like now," I said. Ethan raised his mug. "Digital and devastating." I watched as another video loaded. This one was shot vertically, a bit blurry, but the audio was clear. My Aunt Linda whispered into her husband's ear, "Do you think Sarah knows?" Her husband shook his head. "She's probably off living her best life." I pressed pause. That was enough. I set the phone down and walked to the edge of the balcony. The breeze pulled at my robe. The beach below was quiet, waves lapping the shore in soft rhythm. They were self-destructing without my help, without my presence. Every piece of the illusion they tried to build for Chloe was collapsing, not because I sabotaged it, but because the truth doesn't stay buried forever. Ethan joined me, wrapping his arm around my waist. "You want to go snorkeling today?" I leaned into him, watching the water shift colors under the morning sun. "Let's do that. Let's be somewhere without cell service." We left our phones inside, letting the door click shut behind us. The ocean waited, and for once, I wasn't looking back. By the time we got back to the bungalow, sand still on our ankles and salt drying in our hair, the internet had exploded. Ethan unlocked his phone to check the weather. Mine stayed off, half buried in a towel with my sunglasses, but I saw it in his face before he said a word. 10 million views. Hashtags trending. Which one? He showed me the screen. Hashtag Bennett wedding meltdown. Top of TikTok. Stitched, remixed, even quoted in news headlines. A pop culture podcast was already dissecting it with a thumbnail that read, "What really happened at the Bennett wedding?" I didn't ask for details. He passed me a towel and kissed the top of my head. "Take your time." I walked to the outdoor shower and let the water run over my shoulders, clearing sunscreen and salt. My thoughts stayed quiet, no bitterness, no gloating, just a settled stillness I hadn't felt in years. When I finally turned my phone back on, it vibrated for what felt like a full minute. Notifications flooded the screen, faster than I could swipe. A text from Mom, the first in over a year. "Your sister needs you. Come home." One from a number I didn't recognize. "Please, your family needs help." Another, "They're saying awful things about her. You're the only one who can fix this." I stared at the words until they blurred. None of them said sorry. None said we were wrong. Just need expectation, urgency that had nothing to do with love. I clicked block, one by one, then closed the Messages app altogether. Ethan was sitting on the porch with a drink in hand, his feet propped on the railing. They reaching out. I nodded, sitting beside him, watching the sun start its descent behind the palms. Blocked them. All of them. He glanced at me. "Even your mom." I didn't look away from the sky. Especially her. We sat in silence for a bit, the kind that's full, not empty. Then Ethan asked, "What if they keep trying? 100? 1,000 times?" I turned to him, eyes steady. "Then they'll hear silence 100, 1,000 times. You're sure?" I smiled softly. "It's not anger, not anymore. It's just that this time, I have nothing left to say." He nodded and squeezed my hand. That night, the stars felt closer than ever. No calls. No guilt, just waves and wind and peace. It was strange how quiet the world could be when you stopped answering to the wrong voices down the morning. I opened Instagram for the first time in days, not out of curiosity, just to clean out the noise. Messages poured in. Some from high school classmates I hadn't spoken to in over a decade. A few from distant cousins, even to influencers I didn't know had followed me before. "You okay?" We always knew something was off. "You're stronger than all of them." I archived them all, without reply. Then I saw a DM from my cousin Rachel. She wasn't close to Chloe, never liked the spotlight. Her message was simple. "I hope you're safe. I'm proud of you." No reply needed. I let that one stay. Later that day, Ethan and I took a boat out to a quiet cove. We snorkeled past coral gardens and watched a sea turtle drift below us, like it had no hurry in the world. Back on the boat, we shared mango slices from a paper tray and didn't speak about the mainland once. In the distance, my old life kept ringing, but I let it ring. That evening, I caught a glimpse of another video in passing. Someone had recorded Chloe at the airport, trying to hide behind sunglasses and a hoodie. Reporters were shouting questions. A small child pointed and said, "That's the lady from the screaming wedding." I didn't watch the full clip. Just closed the app and slipped my phone back into the drawer. There was a kind of finality in that choice. Not petty, not cruel, just done. We made dinner ourselves: grilled fish, pineapple slices, a bottle of wine we'd been saving. To letting things end when they need to, Ethan said, raising his glass. To choosing peace without permission, I answered. We clinked glasses, and somewhere beyond the crashing tide and the rustle of palms, my name might have been spoken in rooms full of regret and desperation, but none of that reached me here. Here, I wasn't the sister they forgot, or the daughter they dismissed. I wasn't their fixer or their fallback. I was just me, and that was funnily enough. The next morning, I sat on the porch with a bowl of papaya and lime, the air still warm with sea salt and slow breezes. Ethan was inside, making coffee, humming something off-key. When he called out for me to come look at the television, I thought maybe it was another weather warning or a flight update. Instead, I walked in to see my face, my actual face, on the corner of a CNN morning segment. The banner read, "Viral vows gone wrong." Beside it, a TikTok montage played on loop. It started with drone footage of the beach ceremony, zoomed in on Chloe's panicked expression, then cut to a clip of the stylist throwing down a veil and yelling something unintelligible. Then came the crowd footage, including someone shouting from behind the phone camera, That's the sister, the one they erased. I stood frozen, a piece of fruit still halfway to my mouth. Ethan grabbed the remote and turned up the volume. The anchor and cultural correspondent, both in polite media tones, were trying to dissect the social response. One commented on the sharp divide between curated family perfection and messy real-world betrayals. The other cited the hashtag Bennett wedding meltdown. That tag had already hit 10 million views. 10 million strangers watching the implosion of a family. I had tried so hard to hold together. Ethan looked over at me carefully. "You okay?" I nodded, but I wasn't sure what I was feeling. Not quite shock. Not satisfaction either. Just clarity. The kind that comes not from triumph, but from truth, finally being louder than denial. Later that afternoon, I opened my laptop for the first time since arriving in Barbados. My inbox had exploded. At least 20 brands were pitching partnerships, a wellness retreat, wanted me to host a sisterhood seminar. A podcast titled Sibling Rivalry, Real and Raw offered a feature episode. Another suggested a capsule clothing line called Uninvited but Unbothered. I scrolled past the noise. Then I saw it. Subject: Request for interview. Harper Lee, CNN, Arts and Culture. It felt oddly formal, almost gentle. I clicked. Dear Sarah, my name is Harper Lee, a correspondent with CNN's Culture Desk. We've been covering the viral Bennett wedding story and the surrounding public discourse. If you're open to it, we'd love to hear your side. Not a scandal, but the story in your voice, in your timing. No pressure, just an open invitation. Warm regards, Harper. I read it 3 times. It was the first message that didn't feel like someone trying to make me a product. It was quiet, considerate. Still, I didn't reply. Instead, I closed the laptop and walked barefoot along the shore until the sun tilted west. The sky bloomed with coral and violet. Each wave erased the last. My thoughts followed that rhythm, rising, pulling back, quiet again. That night, Ethan handed me his phone with an open article. Chloe had released a public statement through her publicist. The title in bold: The Truth Behind the Wedding Day Disaster. Her quote stood out. I trusted the wrong people. Some energy in the room was just hostile. I felt sabotaged. There it was, her version. I wasn't even named, but it was clear who she meant. The jealous one, the shadow. I didn't get angry. I didn't cry. I just took a long breath and handed the phone back. Later, Ethan found me sitting on the deck with my phone in hand. I opened Instagram, chose a photo he'd taken 2 mornings ago. Just my face. No filter, no makeup, damp hair curled slightly from the sea. My expression was quiet but not small, a woman who wasn't performing. I typed a caption. I was uninvited. Now I'm uninterested. No tags, no hashtags, no grandstand. I posted it, then turned the phone off and went inside. By sunrise, it had over 400,000 shares. The world hadn't just noticed, it was listening. By noon, Harper emailed again. Sarah, your post was powerful. We're also organizing a TEDx event next month in Boulder. The theme is reimagining boundaries. We'd love to invite you as a speaker if that's something you'd ever consider. Topic suggestion: Boundaries with family. No pressure, just a space. Warmly, Harper. I read it aloud to Ethan while we were finishing breakfast. He stirred his coffee and leaned back. That's something. I know. Do you want to? I paused. I never planned to tell this story, not to strangers, not on a stage, but maybe it was already out there. Maybe not telling it would mean letting others define it for me again. I don't know. I just wanted to disappear. And instead, your truth lit up the sky, he said. I laughed softly. That might be the most poetic thing you've ever said. He grinned. You make me poetic. But seriously, whatever you decide, make sure it's because it feels right, not because they expect you to play a role again. That afternoon, I opened a new document, just the blank screen. No title, no outline. But the words came anyway. Not because I had to say them, but because this time, they were mine, and I was ready. The call came just as the sun slipped beneath the horizon, casting the sky in soft lavender and peach. I had been sitting on the terrace with a book I wasn't really reading, letting the ocean's breath fill the spaces silence used to occupy. Ethan handed me the phone, screen glowing with a familiar name, Evelyn Whitaker. I hadn't spoken to my grandmother in over a year. She had stopped attending family events long before I was officially erased, her silence more of a protest than a surrender. She was my father's mother, and unlike my mother's side of the family, she had always really seen me. I hesitated, then answered. Her voice was raspy but steady. Sarah, sweetheart, I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all, Grandma, she exhaled slowly. I wanted to tell you something. I should have done it years ago, but I didn't know if it was my place. Your grandfather left a will, a different one than the family told you about. He updated it before he passed, made sure you were the primary beneficiary. He wanted you to have the Santa Fe house, his trust in the investment firm, and a few other assets. I blinked, but they said he left everything to Mom and Aunt Susan. He didn't. That's what your mother wanted everyone to believe. But the signed version, the final one, was with my attorney, Ava Monroe. She's still in practice, and we're working to make it right. I didn't speak. I wasn't shocked. Not anymore. My body didn't even react with anger, just a cool wave of confirmation. Evelyn continued. Your mother knew. She was in the room when he signed it. But when he passed, she convinced everyone that the older version was final. And I let her. I didn't want the family to break apart even more. My stomach sank. Not from betrayal, but from the weight of generational silence. Why now? I asked gently. Because I saw you on the news, and I realized you've been carrying weight that never should have been yours. There was a long pause between us, filled only by gulls calling somewhere in the distance. I'm not calling to ask anything of you, Evelyn said finally, just to say I'm sorry, and that Ava is filing a motion to reinstate the true will. You'll hear from her soon. Thank you, Grandma. After we hung up, I stared at the sea for a long time. Ethan came out, sat beside me, not saying a word. When I told him everything, he simply nodded. That explains a lot. It did. It explained the unease I'd always felt, the whispers that followed me at family events, the looks my mother gave me when I asked too many questions about Grandpa's accounts. But it didn't change who I was now. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel triumphant, just clear. This wasn't about the Santa Fe house or the money. It wasn't even about the lie. It was about finally seeing the full picture, about realizing that even the roots of my family's manipulation went deeper than I thought. When Ava Monroe called me 2 days later, her tone was warm, precise, and sharp like glass. We're filing in Superior Court in Denver. The documents, solid dated, notarized, witnessed. Your mother will have an opportunity to contest it, but our position is strong. I asked her what would happen if it was enforced. You would be the primary heir to your grandfather's estate, retroactively, which includes the family's remaining shares in Whitaker Holdings. I almost laughed. The same holdings. Chloe tried to impress influencers with the ones she bragged about at the rehearsal dinner. I don't want revenge, I told Ava. I just want it to stop the pretending, the rewriting. She replied softly, sometimes clarity is the sharpest form of justice. I didn't tell my mother. I didn't call Chloe. I didn't post a thing. I just lived. I kept swimming in the mornings, cooking dinners with Ethan, answering emails from students who watched my TEDx clip and said it made them call their estranged siblings or set boundaries with toxic parents. I existed without the ache of proving I deserved to. One night, Ethan placed an envelope in front of me. It had the court seal. Inside was the preliminary hearing date. It didn't make my heart race. It didn't steal my breath. It was just paper. The truth was already mine. The rest was just logistics. Chloe was not used to losing, especially not in public. At first, she stayed quiet, probably hoping the buzz would die down, but it didn't. The video of the wedding fiasco had gone viral in ways no one could have predicted. It wasn't just one clip anymore. TikTokers were making deep dives, analyzing every awkward glance, every moment of tension. There were reenactments, reaction videos, even a couple of makeup tutorials inspired by my beach selfie. Somewhere between the 5th and 10th million view, Chloe snapped. She submitted a takedown request to TikTok, citing violation of her privacy. Then another, and another. She flagged the most popular account or creator named Olivia James, who had posted a stitched commentary that opened with the words, "So apparently the sister planned and paid for the wedding and wasn't invited." That one had over 8 million views and counting. Olivia responded with a new video the next morning, her voice calm but firm. "You can try to silence the internet," she said, "but you can't erase what you did just because it's inconvenient now. The truth doesn't violate privacy, it just shines a light where you hoped no one would look." The comments section exploded. Most people sided with Olivia. Some dug up old interviews Chloe had done, where she talked about her perfect family and her supportive upbringing. Others started stitching together receipts, even the leaked seating chart that showed my name scribbled out and replaced with TBD next to the kitchen staff. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. By that weekend, a new phrase was trending. #Justice for Sarah. It was surreal. I never asked for any of it. I never thought people would care this much. But they did, not because I was special, but because the story was familiar. People knew what it felt like to be left out, to be replaced, to be made to feel invisible by those who should have protected you. And now Chloe was learning what it felt like to be held accountable. She tried a different approach next to live stream. I wasn't watching it live, but Ethan was. He called me from the guest house, voice tight with disbelief. "You're going to want to see this." I walked into the main room, where the television was on and muted, her face already filling the screen, eyes red, makeup streaked, voice trembling. "I didn't want to lose my sister," she said, her hands shaking. "I never meant to hurt her. I just wanted things to be perfect." The chat was brutal. "Then why did you erase her?" "Perfect for who? Your Instagram followers. You knew she paid and still cut her out." The comments kept pouring in. Ethan glanced at me and handed me the remote. I turned the volume down even lower, until it was just a whisper under the ceiling fan. "She's not crying because she lost you," he said. "She's crying because she lost the image, the fairy tale. You messed up the picture she painted for everyone." I didn't reply. Instead, I walked over to the stereo and hit play. A slow jazz record started, warm and loose, filling the space between us. Sometimes silence said more than anything else. The next morning, my inbox was full. Strangers from all over the country shared their stories, women who had been written out of wills, daughters who were pushed aside for prettier sisters, artists whose families only supported them once success became profitable. It wasn't just me. It never was. One message stood out. A mother wrote, "My teenage daughter watched your TEDx clip last night. She turned to me afterward and said, 'Maybe I don't need to chase them anymore. Maybe I can just chase me.' Thank you for giving her that." I sat with that for a while, not because it was flattering, but because it was humbling. What started as pain had turned into something larger than me, something freeing. Meanwhile, Chloe tried to pivot again. She posted a curated carousel on Instagram, pictures of us as kids, captions about forgiveness and healing, a quote from some therapist she probably never saw. Comments were turned off. Ethan laughed when he saw it. "She's trying to rebrand." But I wasn't interested in fighting her anymore or correcting her version of the story. I had said what I needed to say by doing what she never expected me to do. Not begging, not explaining, not returning for one last talk, just leaving. Let her cry. Let the comments come. Let the internet do what it does. And if she ever really wanted to understand what she lost, she'd have to do the work, the quiet kind, the lonely kind, the kind that no livestream could fix by the end of the week. TikTok had reinstated all the removed videos. The platform released a statement saying that the content in question did not violate any privacy rules and was protected under commentary and public interest. Chloe never addressed that. She stayed offline after that, at least for a while. Ethan and I took a walk that night, the stars clear over the beach. We didn't talk much, just the sound of waves and our footsteps. After a while, he asked, "So, do you think they'll ever really see you? Not just notice you see you?" I stopped and looked out at the dark water. They saw what they wanted to see, a version of me that stayed useful, quiet, and small. And now I don't need to be seen by them. I just need to stay visible to myself. He smiled and reached for my hand. "Come on, the tide's going out." We turned back toward the house, the jazz still drifting faintly through the screen door, the night folding gently around us. And for once, there was nothing left I needed to prove. The water was still when we stepped onto the dock, golden light stretching across its surface like a quiet promise. Ethan handed me my paddle and didn't say a word, and I didn't need him to. We pushed off gently, our boards gliding side by side into the open cove. I had never been good at silence before. In the past, I would have tried to fill it with questions, explanations, apologies. But that evening, under the slow fading sky, I let it be what it was: clean, simple, undemanding. A pelican dove into the water ahead of us, wings slicing the air. And I smiled, not because it was particularly meaningful, but because it reminded me that things could be beautiful without being symbolic. Not everything had to lead to something else. Back at the house, my phone buzzed. I didn't check it right out. It was too nice out, too still. But once we'd rinsed the boards and put them away, I picked it up and saw the name, Harper. Her message was brief. She said the podcast had taken off since the video went viral, that people wanted to hear from me directly, that I could talk about what really happened in my own words, in my own time, no edits, no filters, just me. I stared at the screen for a moment, thumb hovering, then locked the phone and left it face down on the porch table. I had already told my story, not for attention, not for justice, but to let it go. Another message came in a few minutes later, but this time it wasn't to me. Ethan was reading something on his tablet, frown pulling at his mouth. He looked over and said softly, "Your mom emailed me. I blinked. What? He held out the tablet, and I saw the subject line. Is she still mad at us? There was no greeting, no warmth. Just those words as if anger was the only explanation for distance, as if hurt had an expiration date. I didn't say anything, just reached for my phone, opened my email app, and typed her address into the block list. Then I hit confirm. Ethan didn't try to stop me. He didn't even ask if I was sure. He just watched me quietly and then slid the tablet aside. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't even about pain. It was about space, boundaries, breathing room. Later that evening, we walked down to the pier again. The sun was lower now, melting into the horizon, painting everything in soft amber and rose. I sat on the edge of the dock, bare feet skimming the surface, watching a lone sailboat drift past the mouth of the bay. Ethan sat beside me, elbow resting against mine, and asked gently, "So, what now?" I didn't answer right away. I thought about everything we'd done, everything we didn't do, the silence, the statements, the not. Then I said, "Nothing. We just live." And we did. We made dinner together, something easy and warm. We played music. I read a chapter from a novel I hadn't touched in weeks. He started sketching again, filling the corners of his notebook with palm trees and sailboats and nonsense shapes. No one from my family reached out again, not that night, not the next morning, not the day after that. It was like they had disappeared entirely, or maybe I had. And honestly, I didn't mind. Sometimes absence is not a loss, it's a return to yourself, to peace, to whatever version of you got buried under years of being the responsible one, the fixer, the one who always made room for everyone else. I didn't feel angry, not even numb. I felt whole. That night, as I stood brushing my teeth, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, not just my face, but the expression I wore, calm, unforced. I didn't look like someone who had burned bridges. I looked like someone who had walked away before the fire reached her. And maybe that was what healing looked like, not the dramatic reconciliation, not the teary phone calls or the apologies that came years too late. Just the quiet choice to stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. The next morning, we paddled out again. The water was glass, the world hushed, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for anything to happen. I was just there, moving forward. The pen hovered above the paper, longer than I expected. I'd been staring at the blank page for 20 minutes. The ocean beyond the balcony railing, whispering like it was daring me to tell the truth, not to anyone else, just to myself. I didn't know what I was hoping to accomplish when I opened the notebook. Closure. Control. A rewrite of the past that would never come. Still, something inside urged me to start, so I did. Asterisk, Dear Valerie, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I'm not even sure I'd want you to, but I think I need to say these things out loud, even if no one is listening. I told myself I had let go, convinced myself that what you said or didn't say no longer had power over me. But the truth is, some wounds don't announce themselves as pain. They sit quietly, rearranging the way you walk through life. I wrote about the piano recital when I was 7. The one you missed because Chloe had a fever. I didn't blame you then, I don't even know. But when you didn't ask how it went, didn't even mention it the next morning, I stopped practicing for months. You never noticed. I wrote about 8th grade career day. I stood at the front of the auditorium with my handmade poster about marine biology while every other kid had a parent beside them. You said you had a meeting. I remember scanning the back row, just in case. I wrote about the day Chloe's car broke down, and you called me not to say hi or ask how I was doing, but to wire her the money from my savings account. You never asked if I was okay with it. You just assumed I'd say yes. I did, but it chipped something in me. And then I wrote this. For a long time, I believed love was measured in usefulness, that if I was needed, I'd be wanted. If I fixed enough things, solved enough problems, stayed small enough not to inconvenience anyone, then I'd earn a seat at the table. But I've learned something else now. Real love doesn't need debt to feel valuable. Asterisk. I closed the notebook and stared at the ink, still drying on the last line. The sky outside was shifting, the Caribbean sun beginning to lower itself toward the horizon, throwing orange and lavender into the clouds. I held the letter against my chest for a moment, then folded it gently and slid it into an envelope. No address, no stamps, no intention to send. I placed it in the nightstand drawer, closed it slowly, and let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. It felt like finishing a chapter, not with a slam, but with a soft, final turn of the page. That night, Ethan and I sat out on the beach, a small bonfire crackling in front of us. He passed me a roasted marshmallow on a stick and raised an eyebrow. So, You still want to fly out on Monday? I looked at him, the firelight flickering in his eyes, softening the sharp edges of our usual rush routine. Not yet, I said. He leaned back, elbows in the sand. That's what I thought. I booked us another week. I smiled. Barbados looks good on you. I watched the flames for a while, tracing patterns in the embers, letting the silence stretch comfortably between us. You know, he said after a beat, I don't think you ever needed them to say sorry. I think you just needed to know you didn't owe them anything anymore. I nodded slowly, letting that truth sink in. The next morning, I woke up to a notification pinging on Ethan's phone. He handed it to me wordlessly. It was an email from Valerie, subject line, any word from her. The body of the message was short, is she still mad? I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the email settings, added her address to the blocked list, and handed the phone back. No dramatic goodbye. No final message, just quiet closure. Later that afternoon, we took the paddleboards out again. The sea was calm, glassy. We moved in sync, cutting through the water under a sky so clear it felt like the world was brand new. I wasn't angry anymore, not sad either, just done. Done waiting. Done hoping for recognition from people who never really saw me. Done playing the second-string character in a story I'd been writing all along. We paddled farther than usual, until the resort was a blur behind us, and the only sounds were water, wind, and the occasional seabird overhead. Ethan glanced over at me and grinned. You look lighter. I think I finally am. We floated for a while, not needing to fill the space with talk, just letting the sun warm our shoulders and the salt cling to our skin. Later, back at the villa, I sat on the patio and stared out at the sunset, the same colors as the day before, but they looked different now, not because the sky had changed, because I had. I wasn't waiting anymore, not for apologies, not for permission, not for anyone else's version of who I was supposed to be. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had stopped holding my breath, and that, I realized, was the beginning of something new. A month later, I stood behind a red circle, the lights hot on my face, a mic clipped discreetly to my collar. My palms weren't shaking, not anymore. My TEDx talk was titled No is a Full Sentence, and it was already climbing into the millions of views by the time I walked off the stage and exhaled into the hallway backstage. I had written it in pieces in Barbados, and later at our new place in Seattle. In the quiet mornings when the world was still stretching awake, and I could think clearly, it wasn't about my family, not directly. It was about boundaries, about reclaiming the word no without apology or footnotes, about not explaining your worth to people who are never really asking to understand you. I didn't mention my mother or Chloe, but I didn't need to. The message found the ones it was meant for. The next day, the video was featured on the homepage. The inbox on my author's site lit up. Messages poured in from women I'd never met but somehow already knew. They wrote about weddings they weren't invited to, about careers they put on hold to be convenient for others, about families who mistook silence for peace and compliance for love. I read every word, but I didn't go looking for one from Chloe, and I didn't find one. She hadn't reached out, and for the first time in my life, I didn't keep my phone volume up just in case. I didn't refresh my email or wonder if I had missed a call. I wasn't angry. I just wasn't waiting. Some things stay broken. Some people choose silence, and that's still a choice. I chose differently. Ethan and I moved into a small townhouse near Lake Union. It wasn't flashy, but it had huge windows, wood floors that creaked just enough to feel alive, and a back deck where I could write barefoot with a cup of tea beside me. I was working on my first book. The title had come to me while swimming in the Caribbean one evening, just before dusk, deleted from the guest list. It wasn't a revenge memoir. It wasn't even a sad one. It was a story about what happens when you stop trying to get back into a room that locked you out long ago. Some chapters were heavy, others were light. A few were funny in that quiet, dark way pain becomes funny after enough distance. Ethan read each draft without comment until the last page. He looked up, eyes damp, and just said, "It's yours." Every morning, I walked the loop by the lake, sneakers crunching on gravel, birdsong weaving into the rustle of breeze through the cedars. I used to start each day checking texts, hoping for a crumb of validation. Now I checked in with myself. Do you feel steady? Yes. Do you feel free? God. Yes. Once during one of those walks, I saw a woman sitting on a bench, crying softly. I didn't stop. I didn't intrude. But I slowed just enough to meet her eyes and nod in that way women do when they recognize the ache in each other. I hope she found her red circle. I never did hear from my mother again. There were no birthday cards, no sudden apologies. No epiphanies wrapped in long emails, just a continued silence that confirmed what I already knew. I had not left the family. I had simply stopped running to keep up with a version of it that never truly included me. Some days, I wondered if she watched the TEDx talk. If she did, I imagined she didn't recognize herself in it, and that was fine. Healing didn't require their understanding it, only required my own. When the book sold, my agent called with tears in her voice. "You're going to help so many people," she said. I smiled and told her, "I just helped one. Me." Ethan and I cooked dinner most nights, nothing fancy. Tacos, roasted vegetables, pasta with too much garlic. We play music loud and dance in the kitchen while the rice boils over. We make plans for trips we haven't booked and laugh about the absurdity of seating charts and monogrammed napkins and people who need power more than they need peace. I had once believed family meant belonging, no matter the cost. Now I understood that sometimes choosing yourself means losing the table you were never truly welcomed at. They held a wedding without me, and I have a life without them. If you've ever been erased, overlooked, told to be smaller, quieter, easier, or more convenient just to stay in the room, know this: you are not the problem, and your voice is not too loud. So tell your story loudly or softly, in ink or pixels or a whisper to the wind. But tell it, because the ones who tried to write you out, they don't get to write the ending. You do.